There is no wind inside the void, only pressure, a silence so dense it feels like it's waiting to burst. Somewhere deep beneath the spine of terror, in chambers older than the throne itself, a red lumen flared, just once, enough to stain stone with meaning, enough to wake a file sealed behind 12 biometric locks, its title etched in Martian data cant, and layered with silent litanies of denial. Operation Bonegrinder, green light, operative codename, Red Grim, activated and cleared. No one spoke the name aloud, not even now. Across the data streams, a slow crawl of sigils unfolded, classified, like veins blooming through frost, target coordinates, planetary designation, mission doctrine, kill priority. The kind of language that didn't suggest murder, it declared it. Every rune pulsed like a heartbeat inside a dying man's chest. Every line of code felt like it was watching the reader. A single command was entered, 13 fingers. Augmetic, ancient, and precise, moved in unison. No voice was given. The authorization didn't need sound, it had weight. And in a different vault, far deeper, something moved. The pod hissed, not like a machine, like an animal in its final dream. Tubes convulsed, clamps unlocked, steam bled from flesh, a figure uncoiled from the steel, its limbs jittering with stim twitch, every joint hyper-responsive, like it had been dreaming of motion and now couldn't stop. Its form was skeletal, armored in black adamantium and studded with injector ports. Its helm was a skull, but not shaped like one. It was one, cut down, refined, industrialized. No lips, just vox grills, no eyes. Just twin pinpricks of red, glowing like rage had been mechanized. He didn't stand. He launched. The air itself seemed afraid of him, screaming as it was displaced. The servitors lining the vault walls convulsed as he passed. Screams bleeding out through corrupted vox loops, skin boiling beneath infrared bursts. They were part of the facility, extensions of its will, but they weren't safe. Nothing was. The handlers didn't watch him go. Their heads remained bowed, sweat running in rivulets from their scalps despite the sub-zero chill. They knew better. He could smell fear, and worse, he could hear thoughts. Half of them wouldn't survive the hour. The rest would have dreams they'd never wake from. Far above, buried inside a macro-dreadnought on orbital lockdown, the mission data was slotted into a needle, not inserted, injected. The information went straight into his spinal mount, each syllable of the kill order feeding directly into the ghost fragments of his cerebellum. Memory, rewritten as instinct. Strategy, metabolized as hunger. Objectives coded as rage. Target, Verdinax Prime. Status, compromised. Occupation, Tau Invasion Force, under Ethereal command. Mandate, Obliteratio Totalis. Authorization, Ultima Nullis Mandate. Sigma Red Clearance, Initiate Rubric Imperialis. Operation Bonegrinder. And deeper, under every line of logic and every layer of doctrine, the true reason pulsed like a cancer that wouldn't die. Revenge. He remembered them, the Tau, their voices, their talk of greater good, their smiles while they cleansed his old world with radiation and mercy. He remembered the sound of screaming civilians, the white light from orbit, the forced calm of ethereal broadcasts, whispering peace over the corpses. That was the day he broke containment. The day they learned he doesn't forget, not even now, not after the surgeries, the mind wipes, the reprogramming. Somewhere inside the monster, that memory still scratched at the inside of his skull like nails on Prometheum. He didn't volunteer for this mission, he never volunteers. But as his drop pod sealed and the stim rush hit his bloodstream like a holy detonation, the last thought to pass through what remained of his soul wasn't tactical, it wasn't even language, it was an image. The face of an ethereal, split in half, the blood glistening like honor, the sound it made like a prayer being torn open. Below him, Verdinax Prime waited, a world half-snatched from Imperial space by the heresy of Xenos diplomacy. They called it liberation. He would call it what it was, a grave. The pod launched. No countdown, no ceremony, just a thundercrack through the sky of a dying age. And from that moment onward, no one slept again on Verdinax. Verdinax Prime had once been a compliant world, industrial, heavy with mineral wealth, its surface carved with cathedrals of labor, refineries the size of cities, factorums that bled smoke into the stratosphere. Before the Tau came, it was loud with purpose. After, it was quiet with promises. They had arrived under the hollow veil of negotiation, envoys draped in clean robes, hovercraft that didn't rumble, broadcasts tuned to lull the mind. The population had been told it was a temporary occupation. Cooperation for shared advancement, trade routes would open, technological aid would flow, no need for resistance. The Administratum file listed the event as xeno-diplomatic subversion. The Inquisition called it something simpler, theft, and Guilliman, he called it an insult. The skies above Verdinax were glassy now, clean of the smoke they once wore like a badge of progress. Tau air cleaners had scrubbed the atmosphere into sterile transparency. The manufactorum stacks no longer belched heat and ash. The forges had gone cold. Workers had been repurposed into logistical drones, well-fed, numbed, watched. The machine cults had been erased, their sacred data looms burned down to silence. The Mechanicus priests had called for extermination. The Imperium had agreed, but extermination was too clinical, too clean, so they sent something else. His pod broke the upper atmosphere at Mach 60, wrapped in ablative shielding and the scream of ancient propulsion. There was no stealth protocol. That was the message. You're being hunted, and we want you to know. Tau air defense systems activated instantly. Orbital drones pinged his trajectory. War drones rerouted from patrol formations. Command bunkers deep beneath the capital city of Kovashator began to flicker with alert runes. Ethereal aides issued calming orders. Security cadres moved into high-speed deployment. Crisis suits launched from vertical silos. Railguns rotated toward the sky, and none of it mattered. The pod impacted a central water purification nexus 2 clicks from the ethereal complex, embedding itself in the superstructure. A moment of silence followed. Then the entire building ruptured from the inside. It wasn't just explosion, it was eruption. Concrete peeled back in slabs. Pressure vents ignited. Water cannons burst into steam. The first wave of Tau responders caught only glimpses, movement too fast for thermal. A sound like mechanical lungs inhaling through their teeth. Then silence, then blood. Arcs of red where there should have been blue. Heads missing before bodies hit the floor. Limbs spinning away from torsos mid-run. Surveillance feeds caught flashes. Frame 1, a skull in the steam. Frame 2, a limb severed clean. Frame 3, static. The command structure reeled. Orders were issued faster than voices could form. Tactical AI projected threat trajectories with rising confusion. No pattern, no logic, just destruction in motion. Inside the ethereal sanctum, the primary target, Onel Kora Shur, stood composed. He was tall, even for his caste, robed in flowing data cloth, flanked by 6 elite bodyguards in custom 1586 suits. His voice was calm. The Guela weapon is a symptom. We remain the cure. He did not understand yet. This wasn't a symptom, this was bone-deep rage given claws. Elsewhere in the city, civilians were ordered into secure zones. Streets were locked down, barricades established. But already, whispers spread. Eyes had seen something too fast to believe. Something that didn't move like a man. Something that killed like a virus. The more the Tau tried to control the flow of information, the more the fear mutated. Stories spread faster than orders. A spirit, a demon, a god in black. And above it all, amidst shattered ferrocrete and bleeding drones, the Eversor moved. He was no longer landing. He was inside. The infiltration was not tactical. It was viral. He didn't breach the facility. He infected it. He ran through corridors at inhuman velocity, his claws carving kill messages into the walls. Each dead Tau left in unnatural positions, limbs bent back, helms removed, eyes crushed. Not for intimidation, not for ritual, just because it felt right. Commanders argued over tactics. Drone swarms failed to lock on. Motion sensors failed to keep up. Power armor crumpled on contact. One fire warrior's audio log survived only 5 seconds. Contact. By the great. No, 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 no. Static. Bones breaking. Something laughing. And still, the ethereals maintained composure. They believed in control, discipline, philosophy. They thought belief could shape reality, but reality had changed. The Emperor had stopped speaking. Now he sensed something that didn't talk at all, and it was grinding toward them. The Tau called it asymmetrical warfare. The Cogboys called it target overmatch. But on Verdinax Prime, in the heart of the invasion zone, it had a different name. Screaming, not the poetic kind, not battlefield noise. Real screaming. Inside walls, behind sealed doors, coming from empty Vox channels. It started in the district known as Grid 13, a logistics hub converted by the Tau into a model city sector. Automated trams, holographic banners preaching integration, compliance centers that issued rations and literature. Families had been relocated here, Imperial citizens pacified by re-education cycles, their former allegiances carved down to whispers. Now Grid 13 was bleeding. The Eversor did not walk. He didn't even run. He moved like a reflex, like a memory of pain given physical form. Thermal sensors failed to track him, not because he was cold, but because every space he passed through registered the same thing: death temperature. Tau patrol teams dropped in coordinated arcs, 15-man units, drones overhead, tactical mapping active. They moved to triangulate, box in, isolate. He carved through them in 5 seconds. From the helmet feed of Shazwi Barrett, movement detected, target is. Audio spike. 147 decibels. Visual, blur, confirming skull motif. He's on me, he's on... Silence. Camera spins. Blood. They found the survivors minutes later, those who hadn't died instantly. One with his arm jammed down his own throat. Another had clawed out both eyes, whispering, "It's not fast, it's already here." By the time crisis suits engaged, the pattern had shifted. He had started leaving bodies in piles, not chaotically, not for show, like they were being sorted, categorized. Tau Command couldn't pass it. The Ethereals issued revised directives. "This is an aberration," they said. "Deploy pulse rifles en masse. Flood the zone." Flood it they did. And the Eversor cut a canal through it. The air turned acidic with blood mist. Fire teams collapsed. Combat drones circled targets that no longer breathed. He tore through armor plating with injector talons, left nerve agents pumping through open wounds, kicked one battlesuit in half with a scream that melted visors. He moved like he was made of blades and habit. Fire warrior teams fled. They weren't cowards. They were trained, disciplined, conditioned, but they weren't suicidal. And he looked like something built for suicide, over and over, and enjoying it. Witness footage flooded the city's noosphere. The Tau tried to suppress it, but it didn't matter. Word had already spread. He can't be killed. He doesn't stop. The Emperor sent a monster, and the truth was, they weren't wrong. He was sprinting down alleyways, twisting mid-air, using corpses as springboards. Everything he touched died, not because he chose to kill, but because his existence made survival irrelevant. At a barricade in Sector 5, they set a trap. 4 15-8 suits, a drone commander, overwatch positions, reinforced barricade lined with grav mines. The Eversor took 3 hits on approach, didn't break stride. He hit the front line with enough force to cave a battlesuit's chest in with his shoulder. He decapitated the drone commander with his knee. He grabbed the last fire warrior by the throat and stared into his eyes. And for the first time he spoke, not with his vox, not with words. He just opened his mouth, and from inside came the scream. It wasn't rage. It wasn't a war cry. It was the sound of a soul trying to burn its way out. A human scream, warped by chemicals, hate, and something deeper, revenge. He dropped the soldier, let him crawl. The others he didn't leave breathing. But this one would speak. He always made sure one would speak, because that was the mission. Not just kill, not just destroy, grind them down. And as the sun began to set over Verdanax, it glinted off the ethereal tower. He looked up, a twitch in his jaw, memory flaring. The structure glowed clean, blue, safe. It was next. The ethereal tower rose like denial incarnate. Polished white stone, blue-lit arches. Gardens blooming with genetically modified flora that never wilted. Calm poured from it, broadcasted as resonance, a psychic thrum engineered to subdue fear. It was the heart of the Tau incursion, the symbol of unity, harmony, reason, and every meter of it made him angrier. He didn't walk to it. He didn't charge. He entered it like a virus slips into a bloodstream. Fast, invisible, unstoppable. By the time the first warning klaxon began to howl, he was already inside. Hallways were lined with statues of progress. Holographic banners floated overhead, displaying Tau ideals translated for human eyes. Phrases like purpose beyond self and harmony through order lit the walls. He passed through them like a blade through water. The guards stationed outside the sanctum barely had time to register heat bloom before his claw tore through the first one's visor. The second tried to raise a pulse carbine. He left the barrel embedded in the wall beside her spine. The third turned to run and made it 2 steps before a needle hit the base of his skull, filled with something not even the officio knew how to catalogue. He opened the sanctum doors by throwing a corpse into the control panel. Inside, it was quiet. Arnel Coracheur stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by light, unarmed, perfectly composed. Behind him, 2 1586 elite bodyguards flexed, armor humming with targeting lock. "You are not necessary," the ethereal said. "This war is already over." The Eversor didn't reply. He just stepped forward. The guards fired. He was already gone. The first bodyguard's head hit the wall before his weapon stopped firing. The second's torso was impaled on a broken piece of armor from the first, thrown like a javelin at supersonic speed. Sparks burst from shattered servo joints. Blood misted the chamber. Then silence again. The ethereal stood unshaken. He reached into his robes and pulled out a data slate, slowly, deliberately. "This contains surrender protocols. I am offering peace." The Eversor stepped into the light. The ethereal blinked, finally registering the details. The red dripping talons, the armor scored with dozens of fresh slashes, the skeletal helm, and the eyes, 2 pinpricks of red fury. Coracheur steadied himself. "You can choose to walk away from this. You are still Guela. You are not lost." The assassin's response came not in words, but movement. He grabbed the ethereal by the throat. Not to kill, not yet. His hand trembled, not from rage, but from restraint. And restraint was a foreign language to him. This moment, This exact second was what he had been engineered to override. But deep inside him, beneath the injections, beneath the brain spikes and the command chain overrides, something remembered. A voice, a city, a flash, a child that screamed like a broken alarm when the bombs dropped. The Ethereal spoke again, voice raspy now. "This is not who you are." That did it. He crushed the throat. Slowly, not with a single blow, with pressure, like grinding bone into powder. The Ethereal tried to gasp. No air came, just blood. When the body hit the ground, the light dimmed, and yet he didn't stop. He tore the banners from the walls, ripped the hologram emitters from their roots, left deep gashes in the architecture with every step, his claws dragging like plows through glass. He wasn't just killing, he was erasing. Outside, Tau Command fell apart. The Ethereal line, once thought unbreakable, had been shattered. Broadcasts looped, drones malfunctioned, cadres faltered, whole battalions dropped weapons and fell to their knees, awaiting new orders that would never come. The assassin stepped out onto the high balcony, drenched in red, looking down at the city that once claimed order. Below, sirens wailed without coherence, firestorms curled into the clouds, and amidst the chaos, the humans of Verdenax began to rise. Not in resistance, not in rebellion, in silence. Because something in them remembered too. This wasn't a victory. This wasn't justice. This was pain finally answering back. Somewhere deep inside Verdenax Prime, in a power relay chamber still flickering from overload, a lone Earth-cast engineer lay curled behind a broken console, hand clamped over his mouth to muffle the sobs. He had seen what came through the lower levels, not on a screen, with his own eyes. It moved like vengeance in liquid form, killed like it enjoyed it, and screamed like a soul that hadn't stopped burning since the day it was born. And now, it had won. The Ethereals were dead. The command net was fractured. Entire battalions were in retreat, or worse, stuck in place, awaiting orders that would never come. The Firecast fought where they could, but half their lines had crumbled under the psychological weight alone. Some soldiers had started firing into the dark at shadows that weren't moving. Others simply walked into flames, silent and hollow-eyed. And high above it all, the assassin stood, motionless. The balcony beneath his feet was cracked. His armor was steaming. Blood had dried on the vox grill of his helm like scabbed gilt. He wasn't moving. Not forward, not down, not toward another kill. He was remembering. And that was not part of the program. The scream had been meant to silence the past, but it had dragged it up instead, from beneath the layers of mind surgery, from behind the stim-burnt neurons, the old memories, before the injections, before the scream was his only voice. The name Verdenax wasn't in those memories, but the pain was the same, and so was the silence that followed. He staggered, just once, and caught himself on a railing. His hand trembled, claws still slick with ethereal blood. Somewhere below, a siren tried to reset, but choked on its own corrupted code. Then something happened. Not a threat, not an enemy, a thought. The Eversor turned his head slightly, like someone had just whispered into the side of his skull. He tensed, then stood upright again, the trembling gone. Something in the chemical bath inside his bloodstream adjusted. A new mixture. Unrecorded, unstable, but stabilizing. There was no word for it in the files, but if a tech priest had seen it, they might have said, clarity. Far below, a group of fire warriors clustered in a blast crater watched the silhouette on the tower. They'd stopped running. Something about the stillness drew them. They didn't raise weapons, didn't move. Then he raised his head, and he looked at them. Not scanned, not acquired. Looked, and one of them dropped to his knees. Not in fear, in recognition, because in that moment, just that one, the thing on the tower stopped being a monster. It became a man, burned and broken, drenched in blood, but still something human, buried in the ruin. And then he moved again, not to kill, not to scream, but to leave. He turned from the balcony, walked through the smoke, and disappeared into the wreckage he had made, like a blade sheathing itself after the final cut. No command, no recall, no signal. He just vanished. And for a few terrifying seconds, the galaxy held its breath. The extraction plan was never real, not because there wasn't one. There was. A clean-cut protocol, orbital shuttle disguised as scrap hauler, masked noospheric signatures, auto-track recovery via spinal beacon, standard post-Eversor pickup. It failed immediately. The beacon fried during the first impact. The shuttle was torn apart mid-descent by flak fire from Tau remnants still firing blind into the sky. Every Mechanicus telemetry signal trying to reacquire his location returned with one word burned into its data stream: error. Because the truth was, he was still moving. Not running, not sprinting, not killing, just moving. A slow burn now, through shattered alleys and crushed corridors, his armor leaking stim-laced coolant in trails of steam. One leg dragged slightly, a dent in his chest plate exposed muscle twitching beneath carbon weave. His brain should have liquefied hours ago. The cocktail inside him was no longer pharmacological, it was theological. And still he walked, through firestorms, past broken drones that clicked warnings through ruptured Vox chambers, over Tau civilians trying not to breathe. He didn't look at them, he didn't look at anything, until he found the old Arbeits transport. It was a wreck, half buried under a collapsed chapel of the Omnissiah. Its wheels were gone, rusted out. One door was fused shut, the other barely clinging to its hinge, a relic from another time. And for some reason he climbed in. He didn't know why. There was no logic to it, no programming, just an echo of something before the mask. The cab smelled like ash and oil. The Vox unit was shattered, but the seat, it still had shape, something close to comfort. So he sat, and the war moved on without him. For 6 hours nothing happened, no contact. No retrieval. The world turned. Then a sound. Low, rhythmic, almost casual, a rumble. From behind a hill of debris came a shape, boxy, rust-patched, groaning with age, a chimera, missing armor plating, painted with graffiti and old kill markers. It bounced over craters like it was bored. Atop it, standing like the Emperor's most confused prophet, was a catachan in a tank top, smoking a cigar the size of a lasgun barrel. He squinted through the smoke. "Oi, you there? We're Imperial. Deep recon. Extraction Plan D." No response. The catachan nodded. "Yeah, you look like the guy." The chimera's ramp slammed open with a hydraulic shriek. Inside, 2 guardsmen played cards over a busted ammo crate. One waved lazily. "Come on then, big guy. Taxi's here. Let's roll out of here." The Eversor didn't move at first. Then, he chuckled. Just once. A raw, broken sound that scraped through the Vox grill like gravel through bone. He stood, walked into the chimera, sat between the guardsmen. One slid over a fresh stim needle like it was a drink at a bar. "We love your work," the guardsman muttered. "We heard what you did." As the ramp closed and the chimera rolled back into the wreckage of the city, the catachan turned back to the smouldering skyline and muttered, "Poor stupid blue bastards. Shouldn't have pissed off the big man." And just like that, he was gone. No medals, no debrief, no records, just smoke, blood, and tire tracks. Verdinax Prime never recovered. The administrator marked it as restabilized, but the files were thin. Whole months were blackbarred, data logs redacted, Vox channels rerouted. The Mechanicus declared several sectors spiritually unfit for reclamation. Imperial cartographers drew silent circles around the zones where the Eversor had passed and labeled them with a single phrase, "No litany holds." The Tau never came back. They didn't send reinforcements. They didn't retaliate. They didn't even issue formal protest through the Damocles Protocol. The ethereal line had been cut so deeply it refused to clot. Survivors of Kovashator, the ones still capable of speech, told stories that didn't make sense, about a ghost in bone, about fire without flame, about something that had screamed so hard they could still hear it in their dreams. Whole cadres suffered silent breakdowns. Officers reassigned themselves to deep space listening posts where no one would ask questions. More than a few took vow rituals of silence, refusing to ever speak the name of the world they lost. Because what happened on Verdinax wasn't a battle, it was a memory given knives. In a crumbling Hab district, long after the smoke had cleared, a child once loyal to the greater good found an off-cast piece of armor, half melted and black. She picked it up, turned it over. There, etched into the underside by a claw that had no business writing, were 4 words burned into ceramite. He remembers. So do I. No one knew who left it. No one claimed to understand it. But soon after, whispers returned. Old ones, not about Xenos, not about war, about him, the Eversor. Not his title, not his role. Him, the one who came down like a kill surge and broke the shape of fear. His name? Lost. His purpose? Completed. His memory? Alive. Somewhere, in another war zone, another file unlocks. Another name added to the list. Another cry for help, disguised as an order. And in the dark of some distant moon, in a coffin built for rage, a man with a scream still caught in his throat opens his eyes, because rage doesn't sleep. And bones don't forget. Final status. Operation Bonegrinder, completed. Casualties, classified. Aftershocks, ongoing. Impact on enemy, permanent. Directive complete.